You know, folks, one of the things that I suppose we learned most importantly is how incredibly important it is to be abundantly transparent with folks and to stay consistent with that transparency. So I'll give you a couple of anecdotes. You know, I talked earlier about the fact that we waited for this guideline to come down from the CDC. And finally, we said, you know what, we've got to grab the proverbial bull by the horns and we've got to present to folks exactly what we're going to do to keep their children, our staff, and by default, the families of those children and staff, because they'll be going home after their experience with us. So in April, we wrote a newsletter that went out to our list of over 7,000 folks. And the feedback we got was one of gratitude because we had an optimistic tone. It was one of the first times sort of coming out of what was complete lockdown for most folks in North America to sort of see a light at the end of the tunnel that here's an organization that has a plan in place based on current science that is at least giving us a choice. And that was the big thing we said to folks is, look, we can't 100% guarantee we're going to keep you safe from COVID. But what we can do is tell you we're going to do all of these things to mitigate risk, to try to lower that possibility as much as possible. And now you have a choice. And that choice was not only for parents, but it was also for municipalities and for schools. And we are so grateful for the amount of municipalities, private and public schools that said, you know what, you guys have your act together. You've consistently said this is what you're going to do. But here's one anecdote that I'll share with you that is somewhat humbling, but I think is important to share because of the messaging. We had said we were going to do certain things based on Connecticut state guidelines. And one of those things was we were going to do thermometer checks on every child as they arrived at camp. Well, on our second day of camp this summer, we got an email from the Office of Early Childhood in Connecticut that said, you no longer are mandated to do those checks. And to be honest, they really slow down the check-in process and it's really cumbersome. So I forwarded that email to families and said, tomorrow, we're only going to check if you haven't checked your own child for signs of COVID, for signs of fever. So the next morning, that's what we did. I get an angry email from a parent, and instead of emailing, which is one thing I've learned never to do, is get in an email battle. I picked up the phone and listened to the concerns, and she was spot on. She said, look, based on your original newsletter and what you told us you were going to do, we had enough courage and trust in you to send our child to your camp. And then right in the middle of things, you changed what that was going to be. And of course, I was frustrated because I had given an advance notice and it would have been good. But I realized you never change the rules in the middle of the game, right? We had already started camp. These families had trusted us to do what we said we would do. So regardless of state guidelines, we should have continued that. So sure enough, I sent an email almost immediately apologizing to all the families in the camp. And the headline or the subject of the email was, don't change the rules in the middle of the game. And so we went back to the practice of checking that day. And then for all our camps moving forward, we became transparent on the front end. So we gave parents choices. So for the rest of the summer, our question to families as they pulled up was, have you checked your child for signs of fever today? If the answer was no, we took their thermometer. If the answer was yes, child got out of the car and we proceeded to have them go to their cohort. So I think it's really important just to think about those two things. Be transparent and then stay consistent with that transparency because families are trusting you to do that.